Yo, what's checking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Orangebloods Modcast. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Anwar Richardson, Jason Sukumo, Alex Dunlap, all together again. It feels like it's been, well, we definitely didn't have you guys last week. So I don't know how many weeks it's been, but it's at least been a couple of weeks. So glad to have the gang back together again. This video brought to you, excuse me. Nobody's in the chat yet, so nobody's seeing me coughing. This video brought to you by DeadSoxy, and they've got a special promo right now. Bundle up, save big, 50% off all bundles. More important than anything else, they've got their BOGO winter sale. I guess that's buy one, get one free. Right now, when you get buy two sock bundles, you get the second bundle for 50% off. Excuse me. Or get a free pair of socks with any single pair purchase that you make. Just got to use the promo code Orangebloods. Go to DeadSoxy.com and get the hookup at this very moment. Fellas, we're going to talk Texas football today. I've been trying to think of, man, I'm really struggling at the onset of this video. I was thinking about wildcards for this football team there. I mean, we could talk about Warren Robinson's commitment, but literally Sukumo and I just did a video an hour and a half ago that you guys can go check out on the channel if you want to do that. We've talked about recruiting. We're at this in-between point where recruiting is over. The kids are in the middle of off-season workouts, young men, I should say, and the beginning of spring football. And I was thinking about who are the players that we expect to step up this season that didn't have big roles a year ago, but in 2023 could make the difference as this team looks to take a step from being just outside the Big 12. Excuse me, man. I might have to let you guys take over. Being on the outside of the Big 12 championship game to being in, there's a long list of guys on this team that haven't yet made contributions, but might very well be players that are instrumental in this year's team and trying to get there. I've got a list of guys in my head. I thought it would make for good football conversation to talk about these guys that we really haven't probably talked a lot about on future modcasts because they haven't been vital players yet, but in 2023, maybe they will. Does anybody does anybody have one off the top of their head? I feel like
Did you take a? Is this a rogue shop one? Is this a rogue?
Mute Ketch. Omar, can you mute Ketch and we'll take it for a later?
He can mute himself.
Yeah, man, I'm struggling. I'm on the struggle bus right now. The funny thing is, my head is racing with guys that I want to talk about, but the other part of my brain is like, stop coughing. So, anyway, who knows? Maybe by 30 minutes in, I'll be okay. I'll ask the question again, though, as we begin a conversation about players in this Texas program making the step in 2023. Alex, I'll go to you first. Anybody just absolutely jump off the scholarship board for you when we talk about players making the needed jump to help this team get to that next level?
Yeah, for me, it'd be Ethan Burke is the first that comes off to me. Just if you look at the edge position for Texas and what they have coming back, they have nothing coming back that played more than 60 snaps last season. Ethan Burke, as far as the players who Texas has who can play over there at that buck defensive end, he played 39 snaps last season. That's more than anybody else who's returning. Texas had Jamon Tapp play 22 snaps. We did hear some talk from Sark about him in those bowl game practices, but then after all that, we didn't see Tapp in the bowl game. We did see Ethan Burke. Ethan Burke, if you just look at last year, as far as his efficiency numbers, it was on a small sample, but 39 snaps, he was by far the most effective player on a per snap basis of anybody who had at least double-digit snaps last season. He generated production once every 3.63 snaps, and on 39 total snaps, helped with, he racked up 7 total tackles. I have him for 1 quarterback hit, 1 quarterback pressure, either 1 or 1.5 tackles per loss, depending on how you count one of those TFLs, and also 2 run stuffs on 39 total snaps. That's absurd. production out of him. And it's also a matter of just looking at what else Texas has. Really looking at that edge spot. If we take Barron Sorrell and Justice Finkley out of the equation, who are likely going to stay over at that jack sort of strong side defensive end, you have Ethan Burke, you have Jamon Tapp. I think Jerry Bledsoe is going to be over there at the strong side too. And then, of course, you have the guys coming in like the Colton Vosiks of the world, the Darian Gallettes. I think Akana might start out over there. I'm not exactly sure. After seeing him, Jason, I'd be interested to hear what you think. I'm not sure he might start at the edge now or not. Maybe he'll be like an inside will linebacker. We still don't know what's going to happen with him. But, so it's not much over there, right? And Burke has shown enough to he's the most seasoned. He's shown enough to make me think that he has a lot of potential, clearly great potential out of high school. He's starting to really grow into his body. So I think that he's going to get the first crack over there at the Buck edge rusher spot. And in doing so, it's going to be hard not to be much better than certainly Ray Thornton, certainly Ovi Ogwofu. So I would say he's the first one that jumps off to me. It's a wide open roster spot. He's the most seasoned. He was very productive on a small sample last year. That to me makes for a prime candidate as far as a possible breakout and/or wild card.
Now, Alex, when you say he's the most seasoned, he's played like 39 snaps on defense.
Yep.
I mean, his production.
That's kind of saying something, right? But that's saying something that's the most seasoned, right? Out of all those guys, it's pretty.
A, you're right, but B, it is a bit funny that the guy who's played 39 snaps in his career on defense and is a second-year player is the most seasoned. It tells a story about this team on the defensive side of the ball, what it has available at its disposal to try to address this position that just won't go away. It's the new offensive line, right? Like every year we talk about the offensive line being a problem, and now we're not there anymore. Something has to fill that void, and it does feel like, certainly since Sarkisian has been on campus, you'd have to go back, I guess, to Joseph Osai when he was in that role pre-Sarkisian, when you felt like it was on lockdown. So, Anwar, it makes me wonder, outside of the quarterback position, does Ethan Burke have as much pressure on him as anybody else in the program this year? Because after I ask you that question, I'll go back to Alex or really throw it up to the room. If it's not Ethan Burke, realistically, who would it be? Not knowing the answer to that question off the top of my head in a way where I have no idea how you'll answer it really makes me think, Anwar, about Ethan Burke and how A, he needs to win the job, but B, he needs to be really good. Like, now is the time. He doesn't feel like there's a lot of time for him to grow up anymore. He needs to be a grown-up.
So you're saying as far as Ethan Burke's importance, and so we're not necessarily.
I'm just talking about the pressure that's on him to fill that void that absolutely exists, whether he's ready or not. Somebody's got to be the starter, and they haven't yet gone into the portal and pulled somebody in that can compete for that job. And I don't know that there's really anybody in this recruiting class, even though they've recruited a lot of guys. I don't know that we're looking at that position the way we're looking at linebacker with Anthony Hill and just saying this guy's walking in and 500 plus snaps on defense. Here you go. It is in this first piece of the Wildcards conversation, Burke has kind of a special place in it.
Sure. I mean, I can agree with what you're trying to say, or Alex is saying, as far as the importance of him, as far as creating the pressures and things. Alex, from that position, who was like the most effective guy last season from a numbers standpoint?
On a per snap basis?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ethan Burke. Ethan Burke was the most effective on the team on a per snap basis. So
okay.
So had it at more than 50 snaps played.
If you had it at more than 50 snaps played, who was more than 50 snaps played? Who was the across any position? Who was the best?
Well, it's
per snap.
I guess there's a couple of ways you can answer it.
So all right. So if we're just looking at pure edge guys, so Ethan Burke was at generated production once every 3.63 snaps on 39 total snaps. To get to the next guy that played edge, you would get down to No, well, that's DJ Harris. He only played 5 snaps. Then you get down to Prince Dorba. He played 71 total snaps last year. He generated production once every 14.2 snaps. That would be the next guy down as far as edge. We could continue going down to edge. Ovi Agwofu on 657 snaps. That's the thing, Catch. These starters play all the snaps.
Somebody's got to play 650 snaps this year.
Yeah, and he generated production in a miserable once every 17.29 snaps. That was 6th worst on the team out of 40 total players that played a snap on defense last year.
God, that's not good. It's better than Ray Thornton.
Yeah, much better.
But it's still not good.
Yeah.
Jason, you've just kind of been listening at this point. We haven't really gone to you on this discussion of Ethan Burke and the rest of this edge position that the Longhorns will be trying to figure out the puzzle pieces starting when spring football begins. Just your general thoughts and listening and what's been running through your head.
Well, before we even started on edge, you just kind of left it open. Alex picked somebody, and Ethan Burke was probably the guy that I was looking at too. I mean, your transfers are easy. I mean, Jalen Catalon or the freshman Anthony Hill, A.D. Mitchell, obviously, these are going to be wild card impact guys. But guys that are returning players, I was looking at that position like Alex, and I'm like, okay, Burke, Tap. You know what I mean? I have a sneaky suspicion they're going to have a hard time keeping Colton Vasek out of that. Maybe not game one, okay? Because you don't usually throw true freshmen into the fire. But, Vasek and Burke, obviously from the same team, both fantastic players. You talk to some Westlake people, though, they're probably tell you, hey, man, probably Vasek's the guy to watch there. Maybe not immediately, but long term. So I'm kind of keeping an eye on, Colton Vasek is a wild card. Maybe 1A with Ethan Burke, 1 and 1A, kind of like Alex said. So similar to Alex's mindset, that was the first place my mind went. I still think in the secondary you could have something. You don't bring in these transfers. Jalen Catalon's not being brought in to sit the bench. Even Gavin Holmes, the kid from Wake, I believe. Is he going to be a starter? I don't know, but he's not coming in to not be a valuable contributor. So if you're asking me to kind of go sweep the board, even the punter, your transfers would be my top picks for wild card picks. But I do agree with Alex at that edge position. I think they got talent there. Tap, Ethan Burke. I'm telling you, I think Vasek. I think that we're going to be talking about him quite a bit before the end of the year. That's probably where my focus would go in terms of guys that are returning players from the roster that would maybe be wild card picks to have breakout seasons.
But Jason, just when you have the wild card conversation, just remember, outside of Ryan Watts and Quinn, just about everyone they've gotten in the transfer portal has been average to just not giving you nothing, So
I feel like the guys they're bringing in now that were
it's just hard to picture like Catalon being nothing. If he stays healthy, But I certainly understand what you said, Anwar, and I always think about that when Ketch said earlier, they haven't gone to the portal to go address these edge guys yet this year. I'm thinking to myself when Ketch is saying that, I'm like, almost like why would they? They've had such bad luck with the portal with these edge guys, especially now whenever it feels
Alex, you know why? Because nationally, teams are having unbelievable success with the portal. I did in my 10 thoughts from the weekend, which I don't know if you had a chance to read. I broke down the Athletics top 50, and really I could have extended it to the top 100.
And the one edge guy that Texas was close to getting turned out to be a bust.
There were only 5 busts. Yeah. Nobody got hurt. Of the top 50 guys in the portal, there were 5 busts, and one of them happened to be the guy that we spent the most amount of time talking about last offseason.
O'Shawn Mathis. Yeah.
And even O'Shawn Mathis as a bust had Ovio Gofu production. 3.5 sacks. I think he had 55 tackles. So, he wasn't like terrible to the extent where he made 0 contributions. What did Ovi do last year statistically?
What, He was bad.
Do you have it in front of you? I mean, I could have looked it up myself.
Yeah, I think I have him for. I mean, where he was best at is he on 657. This is on 657 snaps, right? I mean, I think the most impressive part of his profile was that he only missed four tackles. He got 6 quarterback hits and 8 quarterback pressures. So that to me, it's like you consider the fact that Tavondre Sweat had 13 quarterback pressures. Keandre Coburn had 13 quarterback pressures. Barron Swell had 13 quarterback pressures. It's like Ovi had quarterback hits. He had 6 guys who had more quarterback hits than him. DeMarvion Overshown had 7. Keandre Coburn had 7. So I guess he was third place on the team in quarterback hits. That was probably where he shined the most. But other than that, I don't know what the team had him for. If you guys can look up what the team had him for as far as sacks, I had him only at 2 total sacks. Is that what the team official stats have him for?
I'll get it.
Yeah, I'm looking it up, Alex.
Alex, I think what's interesting about Ovi is that's a guy that thought he would be going pro after one season. It says a lot about what didn't get done last year, that he did 2 years at Texas and not going to the NFL. He's transferred to a third school. I talked with Ovi Ogofu about this shortly after he signed. The goal was to go pro after 2021. That he's at LSU at 2023 is kind of crazy. His
2.5 sacks officially, Alex. Sorry.
Yeah, 54 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks. Wildly, he was basically he and O'Shawn Mathis are statistical washes. Almost every single one of those numbers, both tackles for loss, and sacks, all within one of each other. Anwar Woods, the transition a little bit from both the Ovio Gofu and the Ethan Burke side of the conversation. Part of what popped into my head as like a reasoning for having this as a topic today is that I started thinking about last year's recruiting class, top 5 national recruiting class. We know the guys that came in and made immediate impact, right? Whether we're talking about, obviously, Kelvin Banks is the guy that stands out more than anybody else, but there was Jalen Gilbo, there was Terrence Brooks, some of the offensive linemen, obviously, whether it be Cam Williams or DJ Campbell or Cole Hudson, they all played a season ago. But there's this big swath of guys that didn't play. And these are the guys on the redshirt freshman side of things. Malik Murphy, Malik Agbo, Nato, Connor Robertson, Jeray Bledsoe, Jamont Tapp, Zach Swanson, Aaron Barnett, Christopher Ross, Derek Brown, Travell Johnson, Xavier Bryce, Brian Allen Jr., Larry Turner Gooden. And this is a huge piece of last season's recruiting class. And that doesn't include guys like Austin Jordan. I'm trying to see who else I'm forgetting just to make sure I'm not. It doesn't include some guys that technically won't be freshmen next season because they played in 5 or 6 games. The wide receiver position, Brennan Thompson.
Yeah, Austin Jordan played a fair number of snaps. I mean, he played a fair number of snaps. He played 67 snaps. So I don't know. It feels like there should be some guys on War from last year's recruiting class that should be ready after a year. And look, man, and I think we will see some of this when we get to spring football. There will be guys that step up, but in looking at that list, there's not one guy in that group where I'm like, oh yeah, I can't wait to see how this guy does. It feels like the guys that got the buzz last year played. And I don't know that a lot of these guys, other than Jamon Tapp and Jeray Bledsoe to a certain extent, I know people are excited about him. I'm just waiting to see who the next group of young players who are currently on the roster and haven't yet established themselves as important pieces of this team. We're going to see some guys jump up, but trying to guess to the guys that will do it's kind of a hard thing to do. Do you want to hear? I'm sorry.
That's okay. I see. It's from a wild card perspective, though. The guy that I've been thinking about that isn't really particularly in that group, but he got here last year, which was Isaiah Nayor. You know, that to me becomes like a wild card because we just don't know what he could do, what he can be. And we know what we heard when he was healthy, and we know but you know, when he went out, it was just Xavier Worthy and just a bunch of other guys on that team. Like it just was, no disrespect. But you know, for whatever crap we may give Xavier or people may give Xavier for his performance last year, it wasn't a whole lot of people, you know, bringing up the rear that became the guy that stood out and said, okay, maybe Xavier is having some trouble or Quinn and Xavier are not connecting, but look at what I do. Like we didn't see that. So for me, I need to see what, you know, Isaiah Nayor back healthy. You know, what does he do with that? You know, Jason obviously mentioned the AD Mitchell, you know, coming into the room, but, you know, that'll, you know, we'll see as everyone competes. Isaiah Nayor ends up being kind of a wild card thing for me as well. From, like I said, not necessarily a young guy, but a guy who did come in last year.
What's funny is, and Nayor was a guy who I was going to think about too, Catch. And if you have something else to say about him, by all means do it. But I asked Marvion Overshone at the Senior Bowl this exact question, and he told me the name of a different player. So if we want to talk about Nayor, we can, and I can bring that guy up afterwards.
Well, I think hold that thought, Alex.
Okay.
Because it'll certainly be a purposeful segue in a moment. The thing about Nayor, boy, you talk about the sliding doors between success and a lack of success. I think you could almost make a case that if Isaiah Nayor doesn't get hurt, stays healthy, plays a full 12-game season, Jason, I'm almost like tempted to put Texas in the Big 12 championship game. And, you know, in these very thin margins, having a guy that completely adds a dynamic role and element to the offense and took pressure off of, I think, both Quinn Ewers and certainly Xavier Worthy. Now you've got the entire offense opens up if they've got that third guy. So Isaiah Nayor's role in a world where he's healthy a year ago is immense. And yet they've recruited over him in this most recent incoming class. I won't call it a recruiting class because I don't know that you call AD Mitchell a recruit, but that's his position. That they're bringing in AD Mitchell to be a player.
He doesn't play out of the slot. AD doesn't play out of the slot. So
AD Mitchell is going to play in the same place that Isaiah Nayor plays in, which for all of the importance, Jason, that I would put on Nayor if he stays healthy a year ago. And Onwar, you're right. I think he's definitely a guy for this discussion. But Jason, it's going to be – he's still coming off of an injury that's really significant. People think of it as like a 9-month injury. Everybody's a little different. I mean, it's not the career killer that it was to have an ACL injury the way it was about 10, 15 years ago. But some guys come back from it lickety split, and you barely know that they were ever injured. And then there are guys, I mean, you know, Odell Beckham Jr. is a perfect example. He tore his ACL and was never really quite able to get to a place where he could have contributed someplace. My Cowboys certainly flirted with the idea of signing him, but never really felt like they knew if he could play this season, and he didn't. So on one hand, Nayor is battling just getting healthy. And then if he's healthy, he's got to deal with this issue of AD Mitchell, who I think in AD Mitchell's mind is a one-and-done player that I think he expects to come in, have a big season. NFL scouts are going to like who he is as a player and as an athlete. And then I think he may be wanting to go. He may be on the Ovio Gofu plan, which is ball out for a year and then go. There's no easy path back for Isaiah Nayor, even if he is one of the players I think what we'd all instinctively think of as a wild card for this season.
And I'd also just say that, like, we've seen some of these, you know, you say 9, I think 9 months is a little bit.
It is.
Like, we can't count on that, right? I think generally what you can count on is about a year, right? And we saw like this year, like J.K. Dobbins, he got hurt right. Do you remember when the Ravens, all their running backs got hurt? They got like it was Dobbins, then it was Gus Edwards, then it was like Justice Hill. They all like had the season-ending injuries in camp. But we saw J.K. Dobbins, man, he didn't get back to week 6 or something like that of this season.
Didn't look like himself till week 10 or 11, probably.
So I think that people in the chat are talking about Michael Gallup, another good example. So I think that
Gallup was not all the way back. He played. He was a bum the whole time he was on the field for the Cowboys.
And so I think that one extra part of the wild card with Nayor is, is he one of these Wolverine recovery Adrian Petersons? Like if he is, then he'll be back in 8 months. Like he'll be fine. If he's a regular mortal, it could be closer to a year. And he did hurt that thing towards the end.
I think it was August 12th of last season.
Okay, so right in the dead heat of fall camp. If you come back right in the dead heat of fall camp, 12 months on the nose, you're going to be a little bit behind the 8 ball, especially with a dude like A.D. Mitchell here in town. And you got Jonte Cook, who's had a whole spring. It's not going to be the easiest thing just to step in and say, "Hey, man, like everyone else, step out of my way, man. I'm going to get back in that starting X chair." So that to me, just how he recovers from the injury adds onto the whole wild card mix.
And a lot of times guys will tell you, hey, they really don't feel truly back until it's a second year. I mean, you can come back and play obviously in a year out, but sometimes it takes two full seasons before they feel like they're truly back to normal. But Nayor, I mean, I'm not sure if he didn't stay healthy. Certainly, I think he would have been the team's second best receiver. He might have been right there with Xavier Worthy, pushing for the team's best and most productive receiver. I think he had that much talent. Now, to use the term wild card, Anwar, yeah, you're right. He is the ultimate wild card because coming off of injury, how's he going to be back, right at a year out? Will he be back close to 100%? There's videos of him out there running and doing some short clips, and he looks great in his recovery, but that's fine. But that's a little different when you're going through a full spring season or for fall camp and, taking some hits and doing those types of things at 100%. So you got the injury situation. Then you get A.D. Mitchell. You throw him to the equation. Like, I don't really know what to expect from Isaiah Nayor this year. I mean, he might be a guy that, puts up Xavier Worthy-like numbers that the X put up this year, or he may be a guy that's like buried in the rotation and we don't hardly see him, especially if A.D. Mitchell's a potentially one and done guy. Maybe Nayor is 2024 is his year to kind of flourish again. So, yeah, you're talking wild card. He probably is the ultimate wild card because I think he's a fantastic player that could be a big-time contributor. But I don't know if this is the year. He may be the best receiver on the team this year, or he may be a guy that, doesn't really play at all. I don't really know what to expect from Isaiah Nayor. We probably won't have a really good handle on that until really August I guess this year, but late August leading into the season will give us a pretty good handle. We'll see what he does in the spring, but I got to figure in the spring they're going to bring him along super slowly. He probably won't do a whole lot, but yeah, he's probably, now that I kind of think about it, and if we're talking truly the term wild card, he might be the biggest wild card on this team.
I think you said it, Jason, that it won't be something that's in his head. No one will talk about this because we're still a long ways away from it, and everybody will want to see how he does. Could be realistic, though, that A.D. Mitchell's arrival takes some pressure off of, the need to have Nayor 1,000% ready to come for the start of the 2023 season, because it's a huge need on the team. Like, somebody has to be that guy. It allows him potentially to come back at a slower rate. And I think 2024 could be the year. If A.D. Mitchell's the guy that everybody thinks he has a chance to be. And I will say what was really interesting that when I did the research for my 10 thoughts from the weekend, there were probably 10 wide receivers that were in the top 50 or 60 of last year's portal class, the best guys in the class. Every single receiver that transferred started. I think in almost every case had over 500 yards receiving, which doesn't sound like a lot, but would have been a lot on this Texas football team. it hit at 100% rate. And even you could go to, I think the very last guy in the top 50 at the wide receiver position was Johnny Wilson, who was at Florida State.
I don't even think that Trey Palmer that went from LSU to Nebraska was even on that list, was he?
No.
And he went
Oh, God,
and
no.
he just went and had went ape, had the biggest year. I mean, it's crazy.
The receivers that portaled last year, I think the two of the guys that may have disappointed the most were the guys that went to Alabama. I can't remember even off the top of my head what their names were, but one transferred from Louisville and one went from Georgia, ironically enough. I could look them up. For some reason, their names just aren't on the tip of my tongue. But those guys probably did the poorest, and they were still in
They're not all going to be Jamison Williams.
They're not all going to be Jamison Williams.
Transferring to Alabama, man. But you get one Jamison Williams, and you can have a couple misses in the portal if you're Alabama, I would say.
Other than that, everybody else, I mean, it was wild looking at the numbers because just one guy after another who was all conference. I've got the list in front of me. And the whole point is just real quick. So you had Jordan Addison, who still ended up being first team all Big Pac-12. Sorry while I scroll through these. Jacob Cowan at Arizona led the Pac-12 in receptions with 85, had 1,034 yards, 7 touchdowns. Mario Williams, who had kind of nobody's talking about him, but he still caught 40 passes for 631 yards and 5 touchdowns, which is not far away from Xavier Worthy in terms of yards, not quite touchdowns, but a guy that had a real good, solid season. Jaden Hazelwood went to Arkansas from OU, 59, 702, and 3. Ricky Purcell went from Arizona State to Florida. He caught 33 passes for 661 yards and 5 touchdowns. Not literally all these guys. Tyler Hudson went to Louisville, 69 receptions for 1,000+ yards. And Michael Tinsley went to Penn State from Western Kentucky, led Penn State in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. Just like one guy after another. It all bodes well. This all points to me saying on paper, if you look at the trends across the country, A.D. Mitchell to Texas, if he stays healthy, is going to be a really good addition for the Longhorns. And it probably points to if Isaiah Nayor had stayed healthy, we'd be talking about him in this group of receivers from a year ago that post-transfer had really good seasons.
I feel like receiver, maybe running back, well, and I'll throw quarterback in too. As much as any position, though, if you transfer, a lot of it is just finding the right spot. I mean, you're looking at depth charts and like, okay, they got a good quarterback. They throw the ball quite a bit. They have shit at receiver. I know I'm going to be a top 2 at worst receiver in this program. I feel like you're going to have a much higher hit rate at something like that than maybe defensive back or edge or even defensive line. I feel like wide receiver and running back, where it's so statistical based success, that you can really be pretty selective and find, okay, that's a really good fit, just like Texas would have been for Isaiah Nayor last year. Now, will it be this year? Maybe not, because they got a lot of more receivers in the mix. But if you're looking for a 1-year fix, you can probably find a place where you're looking at depth chart, you're looking at the type of offense they run, you're looking at they got a quarterback that can get you the ball, obviously, but you're gonna be able to kind of be pretty selective and hand pick a place that's going to allow you to have some pretty good success. So the numbers don't shock me a whole lot that there was such a huge hit rate at receiver, but I think Nayor thought he had that when he came to Texas, and that might not be the case anymore, certainly not in 2023.
So taking what Ketch said earlier about, or what he's been saying and what he wrote in the 10 thoughts from the weekend about just, about the hit rate with these wide receivers, about the fact that if Nayor would have stayed healthy, he likely would have been, the odds are in his favor that he would have been a productive contributor, right? Odds are probably in A.D. Mitchell's favor. I mean, dude, I talked to somebody at the Senior Bowl that went to the University of Georgia that's an NFL scout, and he just straight, like, I told him I covered Texas and stuff, and he goes, man, you guys got our best guy. Yeah, I mean, you guys got our best guy with A.D. Mitchell. So I think that there's a lot of things pointing towards A.D. Mitchell being good and having a chance to be productive if he stays healthy. So with the caveat that the caveat that Isaiah Nayor comes back healthy and he's good to go 100%. AD Mitchell's in. Could you guys think they would move Xavier Worthy into the slot? Would they displace Jordan Whittington? How do you view him? Do you view him as a guy who could play slot? I mean, I was talking to Julius Brents, the cornerback from Kansas State, and what it was like guarding Xavier Worthy. And he said, well, in 2021, in 2022, Brents got kicked out of the game, I think for targeting. But in 2021, he said, dude, he was tough to guard because he's got the kind of quicks and stuff. And he's got the kind of movement with his feet and his stems off the line of scrimmage, even though he plays Z, that you would typically expect to get from like a slot guy that's on an option route against like nickel corners and stuff like that. He says it's a different guy to face on the outside. Brents is real tall. He's like 6'4". He's like he's like you face guys like Quentin Johnston and stuff like that, and he's a great player. But there's certain problems that a guy like Worthy brings to you out there. A guy you don't necessarily expect to see kind of roaming the outside like that. So, I mean, obviously, there are players who think that Worthy maybe looks a little bit more like a slot guy. Do you guys think he could? Because, I mean,
they haven't played him in the slot because they've been wanting to get him and Whittington on the field together.
Right. Yeah.
So,
I mean, I could see that. I think that would look pretty salty. It would look like a pretty good group if you had a healthy Nayor.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's a big if and a big hypothetical. But I'm just wondering if you guys could see, that, whether or not, or do you just think that they're going to keep him at the Z, keep him outside, and that's just what he plays?
Anwar, that's an interesting question because
it's a fascinating one.
Because if you put it, they need to upgrade in the slot. They didn't get enough production from that position. If you put Worthy in the slot, that upgrades the slot. Yeah. It then comes down to, can you get an outside receiver opposite AD Mitchell that's as good on the, you know what I mean? You're weighing the pros and the cons. You need someone on that outside if you're moving Nayor in that's at least going to perform as well as Whittington is in the slot if you were to leave him there and not replace him with Worthy. I think the coaches are telling us Whittington can't play on the outside, that they've never really dabbled with that a lot. Xavier Worthy was on campus for 5 minutes after that first practice in August, and they were like, okay, well, he's on the outside now and not in the slot. So it just comes down to trying to figure out where improving one thing leaves you elsewhere in terms of it being stronger or weaker. And Nayor, if he could come back all the way, certainly gives the Longhorns more optionality at the wide receiver position. If it's about getting your best 3 receivers on the field, I wonder who those 3 would be and how you could arrange them.
It's those 3, and so I'm wondering, how do you arrange them? Can you get Worthy in the slot? Because I don't see AD, and I sure as hell don't see Isaiah Nayor there. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure.
So I want to segue, and so Alex, I'm still going to come back to you because I want to hear what you wanted to say, but this is kind of a perfect segue in that, in talking about real quick. I didn't go through all the wide receivers. These were the wide receivers in the athletic.com's top from 43 to 50. They had Antoine Wells from South Carolina, who transferred in from James Madison and was first team all SEC with 68 receptions, 928 yards, 6 touchdowns. Number 48 was Charlie Jones, who went from Iowa to Purdue and was a first-team All-American.
He went ham. He's like 26 years old. It's crazy.
110 catches, 1,361 yards, and 12 touchdowns. And then I mentioned Johnny Wilson went from Arizona State to Florida State and was first-team All-SEC with 43 catches, 900 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So the thing about the portal a year ago, it was so deep that even on the back end of that top 50, there was still just cranking out players. Alex, it was Jason that mentioned he's not surprised that the wide receiver position would produce so strongly through the portal. What was really surprising to me was the linebacker position in the portal. Just like wide receiver, it's kind of almost automatic. Almost all of these guys that transferred that were among the top linebackers a year ago, they showed up at the school that they transferred to. They started. They were high-level players, whether they were first team, second team, all-conference type deal, or just really good, solid players that produced where they went. Texas hasn't been able to really find that in the portal, with all due respect to Diamante Tucker-Dorsey, who did play and was okay, but certainly not a difference maker. It was really more of a situational package situation. The Longhorns haven't gone for linebacker in this portal, but God, when you look at the players on the roster, so here are the linebackers we have listed on the scholarship board: Jalen Ford, David Benda, Jet Bush, Maurice Blackwell. Then the only two other guys that aren't true freshmen coming in are Derek Brown and Travell Johnson.
And aren't even like pure linebackers necessarily, you know.
Yeah.
But they're also not guys that, despite the amount of playing time that's potentially open and in some of the spots that they're playing at, not hearing about those guys a ton. Do you, in your estimation, is Texas going to just rely on the kids, not just Anthony Hill, but maybe some of the other line, whether it's Samaje Burrell or anybody else in this linebacking core, LaFau, Gillette, Akana? They bring in a lot of names, but God, it's disappointing, I think, from a Texas football perspective, that there's not someone in that group of linebackers that you're just itching to get on the field and you think is an obvious replacement for some of the departures.
Well, I mean, I talked to Overshone a lot this week, and I haven't talked about the guy who he told me to watch out for yet. But when I did ask him, I'm like, well, who's going to replace you, man? There's nobody on the roster that looks like you. There's nobody on the roster that has your, I'm like, they're guys that, they're guys that are like kind of big dudes. Like, you're a big dude too, but you're slender and long. You used to be this safety, you kind of you're a different kind of linebacker, like, are they going to be able to replace you? And the first thing he said, he's like, dude, I helped to recruit some of these young guys coming in, and Anthony Hill, he's going to be something else. Like, I'm like, could he play your spot? He's like, absolutely, he could play my spot. So that's the first thing that DeMarvion Overshone said before he even mentioned anybody else, was just Anthony. He didn't talk about any David Benda or any kind of, like, he gave a little bit of lip service at one point to Maurice Blackwell, saying, like, if you wanted somebody kind of more of like my profile, you could talk about Maurice, because he, like me, he moved from safety to linebacker and stuff like that. But the first dude he mentioned was Anthony Hill. So I think that there's probably a lot of expectation there around. And that's the thing about Overshone. He's still like, he's funny, man. Like he nerds out. Like he goes on Huddle and watches these guys tape and stuff. And he's real into football, And so he talks about these guys and watches their tape. When he recruits them, he thinks a lot about them. He talks about all his stats and stuff like that. And he just, I think that probably if Overshone is saying that's definitely what he thinks, that's probably what a lot of the people around there are sort of anticipating. So I do think that they'll turn it. I think they'll turn some of the kids loose, as you said earlier, Catch.
Or do you think they go into the portal before this thing's all said and done to try to get, if the right guy were to pop up, someone who could bridge the gap and fill in a year and be, a dependable starter? Or do you think they got to wait till after this spring to figure out what the hell it looks like to have some of these guys in pads?
I think so, because I feel like usually after the spring, it's felt like the last 2 years, we've seen them try to go in the portal and go after guys. So sometimes during spring and then afterwards, we could be kind of start hearing, that's kind of second wave of names. So, now will they be successful in getting it? That's a totally different question. But I always feel like, Catch, and where they are from a scholarship standpoint at this point. I always feel like there's always one or two guys that we're hearing about in the spring that they're active in. I feel like O'Shawn was in the spring of last year. I feel like the kid from the Alabama linebacker that went to Arkansas, I feel like that was the spring guy.
Drew Sanders.
Yeah, Drew Sanders. I feel like that was the spring guy as well. And I think the history we've shown, I'd have to look and see where the Ovies and the Ray Thorntons and Ben Davises of the world arrived, but I feel like they were a little bit later as opposed to earlier. At least the majority of them were. So I'm definitely would anticipate another run at it at some point in the spring.
By the way, how good would this defense have been last year if they'd been able to get Drew Sanders, who they just missed out on? He goes to Arkansas. I don't want to step on Alex's NFL draft toes, but there's been a lot of talk about Drew Sanders as an NFL prospect as I was doing just research work last week. That guy was first-team All-American and just out of control good for the Razorbacks this year. Talk about close but no cigar, and then you end up, chasing guys like O'Shawn Mathis, different position, but still just kind of funny how all that works out. And then you end up, Jalen Ford steps up and has a big season, in part maybe because they didn't get Drew Sanders. So I don't know. I'm looking at the linebacker position, and somebody besides Hill's got to do something. I mean, and I think they're expecting Blackwell to be a guy that fills some void left by Tucker Dorsey. He does play kind of that hybrid role where certainly from situational packages, you could see him getting more run. I just don't know, Jason, in a group of Derek Brown, Travell Johnson, Samaje Burrell, Leona Lafau, Darian Gillette, to me, Akana's more of an edge guy. I'm really curious to see how they use him, but there's not a name from that group. Anthony Hill's easy. Honestly, if he can stay healthy, he's going to play 600 snaps, I would think, plus. But I don't know anybody from that other group of players that I instinctively say, yep, they'll be ready for 2023.
I think Samaje and I think Gillette, another guy's coming off a knee injury, but he's had a lot more time to recover than Nair, who we were talking about previously. You kind of asked the question earlier, do we think they're going to go to the transfer portal, or are they just going to throw the young pups out there? I think they're going to throw the young pups out there, man. I mean, they tried the transfer portal. It just hasn't worked well for them at the linebacker position. You bring in that class that you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I agree, Akana's probably more of an edge guy in time as his body fills out. But, you're bringing those guys in, man. You're not bringing them to sit the bench and sit up the bench for a year or two, and then they end up transferring somewhere else. So I think, Anthony Hill, you said it's a no-brainer. I think Samaje Burrell is going to play. I think he's going to play a lot. And I think Darian Gillette will play a lot, assuming he's healthy, and I think he should be healthy. So, I think those young guys are going to be a big part of the equation this year. Now, how will they play? Will they be able to, fill in some of the voids for like Overshown and, pass up some of these other guys? But listen, Jalen Ford, we know he's a given. David Benda, Jet Bush, it shouldn't take too much for those young guys to kind of move in front of those guys. So I expect we're going to see 2, maybe 3 of those true freshmen playing quite a bit.
Texas is going to be young at linebacker next year. God forbid anything happen to Jalen Ford. It might just be a bunch of babies out on the field. Alex, give us your guy that Overshown mentioned. We now come back to that.
I don't think it's going to be any real surprise to this isn't. It's not pulling the rabbit way out of the hat or anything like that. But he said it completely unsolicited, right? And it was a player on offense, and it's Jonathan Brooks. He just said that, look, people who aren't at practice don't know how good he is, and what Overshown said is that you have Roschon here at the Senior Bowl. He was his roommate there during the week before Roschon hurt his hand. He said, Roschon and Bijan Robinson are gone. And he said, those are 2 of the best running backs that, Texas has had. 2 of the best running backs I've seen in my life. And Brooks is so good that I don't think that the running back room is even going to have a fall off.
I've heard, what's interesting, Jason? I've heard people tell me that a lot. I say Jason, Alex, my bad, about that. And I've heard people say that. The only thing that I question is that when given the opportunity to use Brooks in the bowl game, Sarkisian didn't do that. So I've heard everything you said. Like, I've heard the same thing. Like, Brooks is so good. You don't know how good he looks in practice. all the la da 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 da. And then we got to the bowl game, and it was the run game was non-existent. He didn't even try, and that's like your runway, where it's just a bowl game. Like, you can do it. That's what it's only thing that makes me question, like, well, does Sarkisian feel that way?
I think that there's some talk about the sports hernia and how much that had to do with it, whether they were holding it back. I don't know whether that occurred during the game, whether that was something coming into the game. I mean, obviously we know that it was one of the stupidest things we've ever seen in our whole entire lives to keep on running Keelan Robinson up into the teeth of that defense and inside zone. It was literally one of the dumbest things I've seen any coach do. And you know that these coaches aren't dumb. You know, they're not dumb. They're like they were doing that because they felt like they had to do it. So I think there might have been a little bit more to the Jay Brooks. I should have asked Overshown whether he was hurt for that. He probably would have told me.
There's just no way that guy is on the level of Roschon. And I don't know that we're giving – I think we just too passively and
I understand it sounds like huge hyperbole, right, what I just told you that Overshown told me. But it gives some kind of glimpse into what people around the program at least think, that he would say, like, I don't think there's going to be a fall-off. I kind of looked at him and I said, there's not going to be a fall-off from Bijan and Roschon down to a committee that's going to be headed up by Jay Brooks? You know, to me, that sounds crazy. Like, that sounds like something a lunatic might. It sounds like something you walk into an insane asylum and some dude's like.
They didn't tell that to CJ Baxter on his recruiting visit.
Right. Some dude like some dude's getting all his pills and drinking his shit. He's trying to drink his drink and shaking. He's just like, oh man, like man, Jonathan Brooks is gonna do his speech on. It's like it's something you hear in an insane asylum. But I mean, for him to be so confident about it, to me, kind of says something for sure. Like, they think that he's going to, people around there think he's going to be real good. And so if we're talking about guys that could be wild cards, I mean, I'm not going to let the whole Washington. I mean, I understand the whole Washington thing. I was frustrated with it. I was frustrated with it for my prize picks for sure. What do we have? Like the 60.5 rushing yards. Like he didn't get there.
Oh, God, don't remind me of that.
Yeah, but anyway,
my prize picks were just. It was like a nuclear I thought Jay Brooks was going to go off, and I was several $100 lighter. I can't help but believe
that whole sports hernia thing might have been kind of holding him back and sort of making them a little bit deferential to Keelan Robinson as far as the percentage of touches.
It's funny. I saw the SEC had this comment in the chat. I wanted to bring it up. Can we stop acting like Overshown was a world beater? I understand where he's coming from because Overshown didn't really explode last year with a bunch of massive big plays and stuff. But the NFL seems to really like DeMarvion Overshown. Mm-hmm. They like him as a prospect. From what I was reading, Alex, and you kind of mentioned it before, they love the fact that he eats, sleeps, and drinks football. And, boy, when he's not there this year, I wonder if by October we're underestimating what a really good defense had and a really good player in DeMarvion Overshown.
Yeah, I mean, the Texas defense, I don't think last year had anybody that you would consider a world beater, but they had a couple. They had some players that were good. As Ketch would say, just damn good players, right? Like I think that I think that Overshown was, man, solid. He's good. I was just at Senior Bowl practices, man. Like Overshown's good. He's good, even up against some of the best guys in the whole nation. He's a good player. I agree that he wasn't a world beater. He wasn't a Malcolm Brown. He wasn't a Hassan Ridgeway. He wasn't a Joseph Osai.
I miss Malcolm Brown.
Right. He wasn't one of those guys, but he was a good player for Texas. I'd have to go back and really. That probably would be. That's probably not a good take to say that he's just as good as Malik Jefferson. I'm not sure that that's right, it's somewhere. But he was. I'll say this: he's closer to Malik Jefferson than he is to Anthony Wheeler. Like, but it's like it's hard to think about the kind of guy that you compare Overshown to at linebacker historically here at Texas, but. He's not among the ones that were just average or even liabilities, but I certainly wouldn't put him on the world beater level either. I think he was really good though.
I've got a couple wild cards that I wanted to list before we get into parting shots. We're creeping up on about an hour, so we'll get close to start wrapping this thing up. Anybody else have anybody they want to nominate, or can I give you my two?
I'll just go real quickly. I think Terrence Brooks has a chance to, be a guy. I mean, he played well last year when he was kind of thrust into action due to injury, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's starting on one side of the field and maybe a plus player for that defense.
Took one of the names out of my mouth, Jason. Absolutely. As I look at guys that I think could be wild cards this year, I think Terrence Brooks is going to make it really hard for Gavin Holmes to get on the field in that starting unit for the defense.
Xavier Hutchinson says that he's a bitch to go up against, man. So
is that right?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, he's just scratching the surface. And as many snaps as he ended up getting during the season, I just think he's got a chance to take a really big step. The other guy I wouldn't sleep on is Jalen Gilbo, who at the very beginning of the season when he was healthy was playing in that nickel spot at the expense of Jahdae Barron getting some snaps. I mean, Barron is obviously a critical piece of the defense, but when the season first started, Alex, if I'm not mistaken, I mean, those two guys were kind of like alternating in that first game of the season.
Gilbo was lights out, dude.
He
started out the season just hot. I was like, what does Texas have on his hands here?
And that was game one of his true freshman season. So there's a world out there where if Gilbo and Brooks step up, like from where they ended the season and where they were as freshmen, maybe take that next step as a player, then you've got Barron, then you've got Watts, then you've got Jaron Thompson's coming back, and then you got Catalon. You suddenly have a really talented and diverse set of talents to work with if you're these Texas DB coaches. I mean, we're already at 6 deep, and that doesn't include Gavin Holmes, who everybody that I talked to that covered Gavin Holmes thinks he's a really good player. So they could finally have some depth, and it really will be a battle of survival of the fittest to get on the field for snaps if all those young dogs start biting instead of just barking. And those are my two guys. I've just looked at wild cards and thought, whatever we think this secondary is, if Brooks and Gilbo take steps, it changes the dynamics of everything.
I feel like people Brooks, remember, was I think like top 50-ish nationally ranked player. I mean, this is
borderline 5-star guy.
Yeah, I mean, people kind of forgot about how talented of a prospect he is. So it shouldn't be a surprise that he played well when kind of thrown in there last year. And
no, he's one of the highest rated defensive back recruit.
He stole it from Ohio State for Pete's sake.
The Longhorns have ever signed. He's literally top 5 all time, and it doesn't quite. There are certain positions. He's like the quietest borderline 5-star that I could ever.
Where did he come from? Like, what do you mean? Where did he come from?
Usually, you can't stop talking about these guys, and I don't know that people think about Brooks through that prism, Jason. That he's that talented. I mean, he should take a step. I mean, guys at his position from the state of Texas in the secondary, those guys typically. This is a crazy stat, but I believe I saw it in an article that I wrote a year or two ago that 21 of the top 30 defensive backs in the history of the state of Texas since Rivals has been going were drafted by NFL teams. So, 70% plus. I'm fascinated to see where Brooks goes, because on paper, as he develops, he's an NFL player. He's a guy that's going to eventually get drafted. How high does he get drafted? It will speak to how high of a level he reaches as a college player. Most of the guys that are at the level in terms of ranking that he was were guys that eventually get drafted in the top first 2 days of the draft. So we're talking about that kind of player in the defense that we're just waiting to ascend to that type of level. Alex, at the end of the year, did you think Brooks was anywhere close to being a standout?
Yeah. I mean, I thought Terrence Brooks was great, and he played. Brooks played kind of a lot. I mean, he played 150
season.
Played 157 snaps on the season. The thing about him was he he really wasn't thrown at very much. When he was thrown at, his completion percentage when he was clearly targeted was 70%, which was a good bit higher than the rest of these guys. But as far as the burns, he's a guy that never got burned. He only missed one tackle. He was also able to have a couple of PBUs and blowups and stuff like that, to where it's like he was only clearly targeted 10 times on the season. So to be able to have multiple PBUs when you're only have a 20% pass breakup rate is probably one of the best on the team. And he's just long. He's physical. Like Xavier Hutchinson said, he's just really strong. He's just really strong for a guy that young, number 8. That was the game where Ryan Watts went out a little bit early last year. And you wouldn't think that Hutchinson would say
Hutchinson had a huge game.
Yeah, I think he went 10 for 154 in that game. But as a complete aside, he said it was easy that game because they knew whether Texas was going to be in man or in zone, because they would formation them into it. They said based on the formations we would come out and we knew whether Texas would be in man or in zone. So it was easy for me. And so if you go back and look actually in that game, I think it was, or over the course of the season, just an interesting thing about Hutchinson, he had a 66.1% target rate versus zone and only like an 18% target rate versus man. And so I have a feeling, I've been going back and watched all of those clips, but I think those were him just finding soft spots in that zone against Texas whenever he knew that's what was coming, because that's what he told me, is that Iowa State would formation Texas either into zone or into man and dictate what they wanted to do from there.
All right, guys, I'm going to put Barry Sorrell, who jumps into the super chat, on the spot here in just a second. Barry, I got a question coming for you. You're in the chat. You're using the super chat, so I don't feel bad about hitting you with this grenade. You're saying you got 10 sack year. He's talking about for his boy, Barron Sorrell, who we're all waiting to take that 10 sack year jump, Barry. We're right there with you. Secondary so deep. Quarterbacks will hold the ball. Hurries turn into sacks. 88 is great. Here's my question, Mr. Sorrell. Because if Barron gets 10 sacks this year, that's first team all Big 12. That's putting him into some borderline All-America discussion. In your opinion, I'm not asking you to, to say something that we're going to hold you to. But if you had to, in your mind, your gut instincts, if Barron ends up having a 10-sack year where he's first team all Big 12, somewhere in the All-America discussion, you think your son goes to the NFL draft early, or would he come back? Because 10 sacks is a lot.
I'm going to answer that for him. Boy, you better push your son to the NFL, man. Stock's white hot, man. Get the hell out of here. Go make some money.
I'm just wondering. It's a huge season. Like 10 sacks is a huge season. And Barron had a really good year last year. He made, Barron Sorrell is the wild card, one of these wild cards from 2022, right? It was guys who played, but who do you think makes the jump and changes the team?
Yeah,
Barron was that guy this year.
He was exposed with such, as a freshman in that OU game, right? With his strength at the point of attack. After he started to come on a lot, you were like, man, how much did he work out during the offseason? Is he gonna be able to hold up? You know what I'm saying? Barry says, nice knowing you guys.
That is the most honest answer I think we have ever received. Not gonna lie. When you talk about keeping it real, Barry just kept it real. He's like, I'm going to help him back.
But I'll say this, Catch. If he makes the kind of jump like he did, like I said, we were worried about his play strength as a freshman, right? If he makes the same jump from sophomore to junior as he did from freshman to sophomore, you could be looking at that kind of stuff. Like,
you can make the case that Barron's a wild card for this year. There's still, from what he would mean to this defense, Alex, to go from a 5-sack guy to a double-digit sack guy. I mean, that's given the question marks that exist at the edge position opposite him, where, we're talking about Ethan Burke and what do you get from him on an every down basis and who's the backup behind him and what kind of production you're going to get from. all of that means a lot less if Barron ends up just taking the step from
just bringing the heat, right?
Yeah, it's just, boy, this defense is crying out for a guy like that.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
We'll be doing shows next year talking about who in the hell can replace the void that, Barron Sorrell. We talk about Overshown's void. If Barron can get to that level from a value to a football team standpoint, there's almost nothing else on the defense that can quite compare to having a pass rusher that just scares the crap out of opposing teams every single down. And that would be what we'd be talking about. I'm so glad somehow that worked its way into a question for Barry, because I'll remember that for the rest of my life. Literally every sack that Barron makes this season, I'll have that conversation in the back of my head and I'll do a chuckle. Okay, let's move on to parting shots. We have been going for like an hour. I'm sure I'm going to have a coughing attack here in a second. I can barely talk. Jason, I know you've been waiting. So I'm going to give you the floor. You have a prepared parting shot.
Yes,
knock yourself out.
I never do. And Catch is trying to keep from coughing. I'm trying to keep from falling asleep. Not because this is not wildly entertaining, but yeah, there goes the cough. But no, so I told Catch this story earlier today. So Anwar and Alex, y'all haven't heard this. So last night at 1:00, and I had not fallen asleep. I'm in bed. We used to have ADT alarm system, right? But we don't have it anymore. But they still have the panel thing on the wall in our utility room. It starts beeping every 15 minutes, just beep, a loud beep, just enough where like you start to fall asleep. Damn it, there it goes again. And, I try to sleep through it for about an hour or whatever. And finally I get up and I'm hitting all the buttons this thing's not even active anymore, but it still obviously functions to some degree. So I'm hitting like the code and then hitting the off button, trying to turn it off. And I go lay back down. 15 minutes later, beep. I'm like, damn it. So I get up. It just keeps going on. And eventually it turned into me standing in our laundry room at 3 a.m. And I'm looking at YouTube videos. How do I disable this particular thing? And it turns out you have to take the battery out and replace the battery. So I go get a screwdriver and I pry it open, brought my props, and I take the battery out. I go to bed. All right, finally. It's like 3 a.m. I lie down. I'm starting to nod off. Beep. Like, son of a bitch. So I go in there. I cut the wires supplying the power to it. So no, there's no battery power. There's no electric power. I lie down. Beep. I'm like, what in the hell? So I take this contraption and I go move it into another room further away from our bedroom. Go back to bed. Beep. What the hell? Eventually, I ended up just going upstairs, sleeping on the couch. This was at 4:50 a.m. I'm watching YouTube videos in there with my tools, trying to figure out how to take the whole damn thing off the wall. This morning, I get up, and my wife's like, God, that was crazy, blah, blah, blah. And she goes, it's still beeping. I go, and she goes, yeah, it went off 14 minutes ago. She looked, and I said, you know what? It's going off every 15 minutes. I said, you stand here. I'm going to go stand out here. We're going to figure out where exactly this beep's coming from. I went through all this shit. It was something in our closet that was beeping. So, long story short, I was up about 5 a.m. dealing with something that I probably just broke that I didn't
cutting open all the wires like somebody.
Yes, exactly. Just what the electricians would tell you to do.
Before we started the Modcast, my dad, way back when, was an electrician. Like, Dad, I'm gonna need you to come over today and make sure these wires still aren't hot. We're gonna have to cap them and figure out so I don't burn our house down. But yeah, so it ended up being something in the closet, which actually weirdly powers some kind of scare thing. So all I had to do was go in there and unplug it, problem solved. But I spent 3 hours working on this thing up till 5 a.m. So
Jason, Warren Roberson has made his decision. When we're done, go take your nap.
Well, now I've got a couple other things I got to do this afternoon. I got a doctor's appointment today. I got to get my daughter to gymnastics tonight. So her gymnastics are twice a week, 5:30 to 8:30. Usually it's a good opportunity. I take my computer up there and I just sit there and work. I seriously might just drop her off and just sit in my truck and sleep for 3 hours in the parking lot. So that's my parting shot. FU alarm systems. And yeah,
very caveman-like approach from you. I'm kind of proud that, did you beat it up at all? Was there ever a point where you just started smashing it with your hands?
No, I thought about it and just like slamming it on the ground. Like I mentioned the catch earlier. I don't know if whoever watches Friends, there's an episode where Phoebe, like her smoke detector, no matter what she does, it keeps going off. That's what I felt like last night. And it was pretty, I can laugh about it now, but for 3 hours there last night, it was pretty frustrating.
You can fall asleep and take a power nap in the rest of this video while we're doing parting shots if you need to. Anwar, what do you got from a parting shot standpoint today?
Yeah, kind of cool. Probably like a lot of people looking forward to seeing the LeBron breaks the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar record tonight. They say he's 36 points away. I was thinking like from a big picture perspective, just there's a couple of things like what I've always kind of liked about him is like he's been in the spotlight since he's like a teenager, and here we are like so many years later. We don't have scandals, we don't have like anything crazy that's been in this guy's life, and think of how many kids from a teenager to this point did a bunch of dumb crap that like we know them for. So to be pretty much scandal free is pretty amazing. To be able to see one of the better players, like I'm still an MJ fan, so but still be able to see a guy do something historic like this in our lifetime, it's pretty kind of badass when you kind of
he only needs 36 points.
Yeah.
He has a more or less on Prize Picks right now at 31.5, so we definitely take the more.
I mean, I don't know.
His next two games are at home, Alex. So he's going to break the record at home at Staples one way or the other. But yes, it'll either happen in the fourth quarter tonight, which I bet it does, or it'll happen in the first quarter of the next game. I don't know. It kind of depends on how the game plays out. If it's a close game, I think it happens tonight.
Hey, first quarter in their next game against the Bucks, in a game they might get blown out in. So you probably
okay. Yes.
So they have a taco right now on Jalen Brunson. They have the Taco Tuesdays where they take it off.
Yeah.
So Jalen Brunson, they have it at 25.5. They put it down to 21.5 now. So I'm going to pair that with LeBron over 31.5.
Alex, you shouldn't have mentioned that. Every time I take the taco, I'm over on the taco.
Oh, well.
Over.
That sucks for you. I think I'm about to place this one and win tonight.
I was so mad at the taco that I was talking to a guy, Prize Picks on email, and I vented and told him that because they've gone with James Harden a bunch on Taco Tuesday, and every time I bet on Harden with Taco Tuesday, he doesn't hit it. And so I complained about it. The guy told me that James Harden was the Prize Picks employee of the month.
That makes sense. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that and seeing if just this history that I was thinking about, like just just a few days ago, or I guess last week, Tom Brady retires. So you think about like in football, one of the better basketball players that have ever played it, and thinking like we've gotten a chance to like see this in our lifetime in like real time. Patrick Mahomes will play over the weekend, and he's now probably be the next guy that potentially takes the torch. So it's a good time to be a sports fan. So it's like I said, transitioning from Brady to tonight, Mahomes on this weekend. Looking forward to it. So. Looking forward to the game as well, and see what happens with Jalen Hurts this weekend. I like Kansas City, but Jalen Hurts, I mean, he's a Texas guy. So I think I got to go with Hurts in Philly.
Anwar, real quick on LeBron. Enough doesn't get made out of his story is incredible that he was so hyped, so young, and hyped as the next big monster thing.
Yeah.
And that he's lived up to it. Never gotten a serious injury. This dude's in his late 30s now, and he's cranking out like 30 points a game. He's in his late 30s, and we're asking whether he's going to hit 36 tonight to break the record. Whereas most guys his age in the NBA is like, are they going to hit 6? So he's going to hit 30. He is, as much as he triggers people on Orangebloods, he's one of the great American success stories of our time. That he is going to break Kareem's record blows my mind, and that nothing ever sidetracks him, that he was promised as the king, and that the worst thing that you can say about him possibly is that he's not Michael Jordan. It's just absolutely amazing. And the way that Michael Jordan's story is amazing, that every element of it, we've all remembered he got cut from his high school team and all that stuff. That LeBron's stories, the stuff of a Disney movie, I don't think gets talked about enough. We've taken him for granted for so long, and all he does is just keep producing at all-time levels. It really is something that we don't see very often. There are so many other guys that are promised to be the next big thing and don't ever come close. And this guy's just been cranking it out for 20 years. It's amazing.
And the biggest catch, too, when he's gone, there's not really a guy in the NBA that's must-see TV whenever he's on, no matter what time it is. There's guys you like, and there's guys who are good. Jordan, every time he played, that was must-see. Like, it didn't matter who the hell he was playing. You had to watch it because it's MJ. LeBron gets talked about every single day on every damn show, like, all day long. I don't know who becomes the guy. Like, there's good guys. But, I wouldn't say those, the Lucas of the world or Damians or KDs. Like, I don't necessarily feel like I have to watch them whenever it's on. I think it's something that, like you said, we take for granted. But it's been, it'll be good to see something historic in our lifetime, something like that.
As the
Blake, I'm going to bring this up. Blake says, I just can't bring myself to like LeBron. He's so much of a crybaby and self-centered.
He is a crybaby. Listen, I'm a LeBron homer. I love.
But
LeBron.
Here's the thing, though, Jason. Like, he's not a convict.
No,
he hasn't.
but
he's never done, and he's never had a scandal.
Listen, I was a LeBron fan. I'm a Lakers fan. I was a LeBron fan way before he became. I'm more of a LeBron fan than I'm a Laker fan at this point in my life. And if there's one critique of LeBron, he does whine a little bit too much on the court. I could do with all that, but listen, I'll say it again. I know I'm going to get 1,000 comments disagreeing. When LeBron was at his best, even Jordan wasn't that good. Jordan didn't put up the kind of seasons that LeBron did when he was at his peak. And to see what he's doing now in his late 30s, I mean, the teams he carried to the finals into championships were freaking incredible. Jordan retires. The Bulls were still damn good without Michael Jordan. You take LeBron off some of these Cleveland teams and even Miami probably, they weren't shit. I mean, some of his 2 or 3 peak years, Jordan can't match those 2 or 3. I mean, I get it. He's the GOAT. He's got the 6 championships. But LeBron, man, if you can't appreciate, like you said, Catch, he triggers Orangebloods as much as any topic on Orangebloods, which I'm with Omar. It's comical to me. I'm like, the dude has never really had any trouble. I mean, he's a great role model. He's
like married to his high school sweetheart. He's like the all-America story come true.
Yeah. And I literally was having this conversation with my wife. I was like, you don't understand. She don't watch sports. But I said, he may be one of the greatest athletes to ever walk the earth, just with his size and strength and athleticism. My wife's like, you say that about everybody. She told me, I go, no, this time I really mean it.
How many times are you telling your wife that this guy watching is like,
that guy, he's amazing. Yeah. LeBron, man, I'm like, I'm a LeBron lover. I know it. People give me shit for it, but I just, to piggyback off Omar, I marvel at what he continues to do. Yeah. Just sucks that the Lakers can't win, but
they suck.
I think it was funny that they didn't get Kyrie Irving because the Nets owner just couldn't bear himself to do something that would make Kyrie happy. Man, how much do you have to hate an employee that when he leaves, you want him to be absolutely miserable the second, like forever? Like, boy, that's a different kind of resentment right there. Alex,
how about don't get vaccinated and derail a team's playoff hopes? That'll do it.
Alex, was that your package?
No, I get bored senseless hearing about this NBA shit. So I'm just sorry. I'm just looking around.
Wait a minute, you were asking about Prize Picks 10 minutes ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't get bored senseless betting on things.
All right, give us your parting shot.
No, I just don't know what the hell happened, man. Whenever I leave, and you guys let a bomb go off here on all my trees at my house. This has just been crazy, man. Getting all these cleaned up. Hope everybody out there is doing okay with their trees in Central Texas. You guys got all your stuff figured out already? Everything's fine? You guys got it figured out?
I still waiting for some folks to come out here. I still got stuff down, that
I got
I
mine
need to,
cleaned up. I feel like I got price gouged. I mean, it was ridiculous what they charged me to do a very. I'd already stacked most of the branches. They had to do a few cuts, is all, and like $500 they charged me. It's freaking ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I'm not paying. Like, there's two things. One, I'm not paying it. I'm not doing it. But two, like, I have learned. I probably had about 70 oak trees that I had to do, work on. Thankfully, none of them split. I have neighbors where they split down the middle, but I just had to do some work on where like a little branch, good size to middle sized branches have fallen off. You just got to chainsaw them, paint them.
Way up. I could have done my full saw, but there's no way I got to mine.
What they say is that you have to for the ones that are up super, super high that you just can't get to, that you can just leave them. They generally start to heal within 3 or 4 days, and the beetles probably won't be back out till maybe a little bit later in the end of the month carrying the oak wilt. And so you should be fine. And if you want to clean it up at some point later on down the road, you can. Just make sure it's sometime in the heat of the summer, like around July. Because during the spring is whenever that's their busiest time as far as the beetles for getting around and spreading oak wilt. But so for me,
how old were you when you learned that?
Well, I learned this as a very young man. I mean, I come from the hill country, so it's like, I mean,
so you just know about beetles.
Yeah, well, you worry about oak wilt. You worry about people. You worry about contractors coming to your house and not cleaning off their gear and their saws and spreading it. Like, that's the other thing. People need to remember. It's not just you who might get oak wilt, and you don't want oak wilt. It's your neighbors too. Like, that shit goes down under the streets. It goes down through the root systems. It's like if you hire somebody to come to your house and you don't tell them that they need to disinfect every saw that they have and they need to paint over every wound that they create, they should know that anyway. But you need to see them do it. Because you're not only putting your trees at risk and like a huge amount of the value in your home at risk, you're doing it to your neighbors too. So make sure to always make sure that these saws are disinfected from their last jobs. If they tell you they did it, just say, fine. If you've already done it, you have the supplies. I need to see you do it. And it's nothing against you. It's nothing personal. Well, no, it's nothing against you. It's nothing personal, man. But it's like, literally, man, if I get oak wilt here, probably I lose $200,000 off the value of my home. Like, if I don't have any oak trees, it's like, it's a big deal. So nobody wants oak wilt. Be a good neighbor, man. Just make sure if you hire contractors that they clean it. It's super easy. They just need to be submerged in a alcohol and water mix for like 15 seconds and they're going to die. If they don't want to do that, just spray some bleach on them, just make sure it's a ton of bleach, whatever else. But for me, it's like, what I did, I went out and I got up and got all the oak stuff done, got it all painted over. Now I have that done. I'm moving on to the cedars. But my one lesson I've learned is from now on, I'm retired from the whole extension ladder up the tree with the chainsaw to cut the big limb game. I'm done with it. I did it probably for.
You'd like to announce your retirement?
I'm retired. I'm done. I made a promise to my wife. I made a promise to my mom. It's just, man, those big limbs, they come down. They can just, it's like boom, and they can hit the side of your ladder. And then, man, next thing I know, like, I'm not an old man yet, but I'm getting older, and I don't want to break a hip or a pelvis or some shit. Like, I'm done.
Have you ever fallen off a ladder?
Yeah, totally. But like, I feel like with this one, with this stuff, it was different. With this stuff, it was different. These were much, much bigger limbs than the ones that I generally just get up there to prune, just for. These were like big limbs that had split. So you get them off. And when they fall, sometimes you don't know exactly if they're going to fall, or they might catch on another limb and it just whips back around and can hit your ladder and knocks it down, or it could hit you in the side or puncture a lung. So I'm done. I'm done messing with it. As much as it pains me to pay for this stuff, especially with the price gouging that's going on, if this happens again, I'm knock on wood that it doesn't. For some of those bigger limbs, I'm just done. So that's my party shot. I'm retired from the extension ladder chainsaw game forever.
Hey, if Jason had asked you to come over and do his for $300, would you have done it?
Did I have to get up on a chain? Do I have to get up on a what?
Did someone have to get on a ladder, Jason?
Yeah, man, I got a 10-foot ladder and a pole saw that's a chainsaw. I mean, I couldn't get to them. So yeah, I memean, there's no way, Alex. I mean, unless you're gonna like shimmy, put that little belt on and shimmy up the tree to get to it.
Well, I certainly have like saddle blinds for up in trees where I could shimmy up the tree using one of those. That's probably what I should have used. It's probably what I should have used instead of the extension ladder.
Anwar, have you learned something today?
I'm still. What are the Beatles supposed to do again? Like, I got lost in the Beatles. Like the same way you got lost in the NBA conversation, you lost me at Beatles. What do the Beatles do? Are they eating the tree? Like, what are you saying?
They carry oak wilt, which kills the tree. It kills all your trees. It kills your neighbor's trees.
Oh, okay.
I've never even heard of oak wilt before.
What?
No clue.
I definitely wouldn't watch some dudes like bleach their chainsaws. Like I feel like I feel like I'm such a lesser man for not knowing about the chainsaw stuff and everything. Like it feels like Alex knows man stuff better than I do.
Shout out to Coach Ellison from formerly from Rouse Raiders Track and Field. That's my buddy, Coach Ellison, the cockamamie oak trees. So,
so there's two types of men, right? Catch. There's the man like Alex who can go out there and get all that shit done and know about oak willows, who eat caterpillars, to do whatever the doohickey does. And there's like guys like us who just call someone and hire them, and we're like, we're going to take our manly ass back inside and do something else. So we know our limitations. And
oh my God, if Alex had come over to cut down my stuff for my trees and he started telling me about the Beatles, I'd be like, I'm good, man. Just you do what you think the job is. There's nothing you can tell me that I'm going to completely be able to filter.
I'm more like Alex than you two. I have a can of that black paint, Alex, because I've cut. I know exactly what you're talking about. How can you not know of oak wilt?
I'm more like Catch. I don't know what the hell you guys are saying.
When you've paid other people enough over the years to do all your man stuff, you no longer are a man. You just pay people to be a man for you. And I'm quite content in that lifestyle at this point at 46. My parting shot. I don't know. I've got tree stuff running through my head right now. Like now it makes me feel even worse about my oaks that died during the storm from just a couple of years ago. Please, Patrick Mahomes, win the Super Bowl this weekend. You would be doing me a huge favor. I just don't even know that I want to live in a world where the Eagles have won 2 Super Bowls in the last couple of years, knowing that my Cowboys for the last 3 decades, I don't know what to do with the fact that the Eagles are a serious football team and a serious football organization, and the Cowboys are so Mickey Mouse. The thing that I used to be able to put my head on a pillow and feel good about every night was that the Eagles had never won a Super Bowl, and they weren't a real blue blood in the NFL. They weren't all-time great champions like the Packers in the 50s and the 60s. You have to go way back to like Norm Van Brocklin from 60 plus years ago to get to where like the Eagles had something to feel good about as a fan base. They're too happy. Eagles fans taunting Cowboy fans and like having a leg to stand on in the process makes me feel like I'm in a bizarro alternative universe from reality. And I need Patrick Mahomes, the all-American hero from Texas, to be an American hero on Sunday and keep those bastards from winning yet another Super Bowl. I don't want it on my timeline on Twitter. I don't want to see it on social media at all. I don't want to hear it from Eagles fans that I know. It's amazing the number of bastards that exist in the world that wear that green and white. So Patrick Mahomes, do me a favor. I will be a Chiefs fan this weekend. I'll be a Mahomes fan forever if he can just do this one little thing for me and keep the Eagles from winning yet another Super Bowl. God, it pains me to say that. What am I doing as a Cowboys fan? You guys aren't Cowboys fans. What the hell am I doing still supporting this team? It's a waste of my time.
Wasting your life away is all you're doing. Hey, you're doing it on the hopes that one day that breakthrough is going to occur, and then you just like set yourself up for the disappointment that comes annually. Just it's a weird thing. I don't know how you guys do it.
I'm as grounded as any Cowboys fan you'll find. I don't really go through the ups and the downs because I stay an eternal pessimist. But it's one thing to understand the crap that you support. And to do that, it's another thing to still support the crap that you support. And then the guy, it's like Texas fans watching Oklahoma win championship after championship after championship. But that's kind of been Texas fans their entire lives. Oklahoma has always been good. Oklahoma was good in the Big Eight while Texas was in the Southwest Conference. The Eagles were never worth a shit. And now I'm in my 40s. And it's like the Eagles have been to the NFC Championship game like 10 times since the Cowboys have. And they played in 3 Super Bowls, and they're going for their second title. And, I can live with the Steelers doing that. I can live with the Niners doing that. The Eagles, goddamn, man, it's just a weight on life. And on that note, thanks to DeadSoxy for being a sponsor of the podcast. Again, it's your buy one, get one free right now. Go to the website, use that promo code Orangebloods. For every 2 bundles that you buy, you get 2 bundles for free. For every 1 pair of socks you buy, you get 1 pair of socks for free. Use that promo code Orangebloods and buy the socks that make life a little bit better, even when the Eagles are winning NFC championships. I can feel my voice going, and I might start coughing again. So for Alex, Jason, Anwar, and myself, hit that like button, subscribe. Yeah, my voice is really going. We'll see you guys again next week.